Chapter 14. My mother is slow when we race, she cannot keep up. But in the night, if the wolves howl, she moves closer, and I know she will protect me. If Fallen were not fallen, who knows what would have happened? She began by shouting at the strangers, waving them off like they were badly behaved dogs who had run into her yard. I ran for the byre and took out 4 pails full of milk, so the filly couldn't spill them. The wrapped cheese was all safe, hanging from the roof poles. Then I closed the filly inside. She whinnied piteously, but I had to keep her safe, and milling cattle was dangerous. Bevan and I threw dirt on the fire so that if the cattle started to mill, none would stumble into the pits and get burned. Then we sprinted down to the herd. I spotted the braided halter easily, and I walked to that side. All the cows were not important, but to me the heifer was the most important. All the cows were important, but to me the heifer was the most important cow there would ever be. "Begone!" Fallen was screaming. "Do you not hear? Well, get you gone!" There were shouts in response. Everyone had scattered to locate the cattle and sheep, and the 4 of us drove them slowly, gently into a loose bunch. Fallen was still shouting. "Maybe one of us should go talk to them," Dale Fines called to me across the black backs of the restless cows. I nodded, thinking she meant she would go, but she just stood looking at me. Bevan was nodding. "You should, Laura. Fallen is going to make them want trouble." "I don't think she will listen to me," I answered, looking at Dale Fine, then at Nerve. "You both are older than she is." Garrick frowned at me. "But you are the daughter of our Ree. If I had been a boy, I would have thought of that, I suppose. The son of the Ree is always regarded as the one to lead if his father is not present. But I wasn't a boy, and I had no idea what to do. All I wanted was to run to the dairy byre and let my silver filly out and comfort her so she wouldn't be afraid. A fresh round of shouting made me twist around, trying to see over the crest of the hill. I couldn't. "Try, Laura," Bevan said. "Tell them who you are and see if you can settle things." I swallowed hard and turned toward the voices. I walked fast, trying to think of what I could say that would matter to anyone. "Get back," Fallen was still shouting. There were several answers, boys' voices. Boys? Summer pasture was usually a job for girls. Something prickled at my thoughts. Were these the raiders who had taken our horses? Had they lost the gray mare close by and come back for her? I crested the hill and couldn't help but glancing back at the byre. The door was still shut fast. Below me the hillside was dotted with cattle and people, all of them staring at Fallen. "I am the daughter of our Ree," I said, and not a single soul heard me. Fallon shouted a truly vile insult, and one of the boys, sick of her screaming, picked up a rock and flung it over her head. "I am the daughter," I began, raising my voice, but Fallon picked up the stone and threw it hard. It struck in front of the boy, and he flinched, stepping backward. His friends laughed at him. Fallon bent over, looking for another rock. "I am the daughter of our Ree," I roared. Fallon straightened and glared at me. A few of the boys pried their eyes from Fallon to look at me. "This had been our summer pasture since the rocks began keeping time," I said. One of the boys laughed at the old expression. He was half-grown. I looked at the rest of them. A few were older than Fallon. Some looked 20 or more. "We need to graze our cows a few days before we go on," a man called back. Hearing a man's voice startled me. Who were these people who sent their boys and men to do what was usually the work of girls? He stepped forward. He was tall, and his hair was dark and curled close to his head. "Do us the courtesy of keeping them close," I called. "Don't let them come up the hill." The man stepped forward and gave me a little bow. "Agreed, daughter of the Ree." No one laughed. I nodded. I was shaking with fury when I was turned to walk toward Fallen. She stared at me as I got closer. "Fallen," I said, when I knew she could hear me clearly. "Please come back to the byre." She started to answer, but I kept walking, thinking she had to follow me to respond. She might have. I think she was turning to come with me when the stone hit her from behind. She whirled around, scooping up a fist-sized stone, hurling it down the mountainside. A boy's wild red hair that reminded me of Bevan's pitched sideways and lay still on the ground. There was a terrible moment of silence, then a roar of fury from many throats. I looked at the realization of horror on Fallon's face, then I ran. "Get the cattle moving," I shouted at Bevan and the others. Fallon threw a stone. "The boy is hurt or dead." Bevan shouted something back, but I veered for the byre and didn't hear. The filly was shaking as I pulled her into the sunshine, her eyes rimmed and white, her neck arched. I led her as fast as I could over the crest of the hill, then downward, toward the herd of cows. The girls already had them moving more or less in one direction. I spotted the heifer wearing my braided yellow and white halter and followed her. I knew I was not going to be able to run with the others if it came to that, because I was too afraid of the filly getting away from me and getting trampled in the herd, but I needed that cow. I tried to walk faster, keeping the filly to a trot, one arm over her neck. The cattle were bawling uneasy behind us. There were shouts, but I couldn't tell if they were getting closer. The filly whinnied, and her high, shrill voice carried over the din. I saw the cow turn. The filly nickered again. The cow stopped, and my heart leaped. Walking fast, but not faster than the filly could keep up with without breaking into a canter, I wove us a path through the cattle. I could see Bebin and the others running as the cows began to trot. They had no idea what was wrong, but they could sense danger, and they wanted to get away from it. I slowed a little, glancing backward. I saw a man walking along at the edge of our hill. I tried to imagine what he could see from there. The last of the herd disappearing in front of me, a girl, a foal, and a cow struggling to keep up. I had no time to ponder because the sound of hoofbeats behind me made me turn. "Daughter of the Ree," a man shouted, and I turned to see him, his dark curling hair ruffled by wind, and his horse galloped along the base of the hill. He reined in toward me. Other riders followed him. I stopped and stood still. What else could I do? As I turned to face him, I saw Fallen, her hands tied in front of her, the horse she was on being led by a man who rode beside her. "Daughter of the Ree," the dark-haired man called again. "Did you happen to find a gray mare in the woods? Where is she?" I looked straight into his hateful eyes. "Dead. You killed her." He stared, then I saw him make a sudden sense out of the way the foal stood half behind me and the protective angle of the cow's stance. He laughed. Then he motioned at one of his men. "Get her up on a horse and put the foal across someone's saddle pad. And bring that cow. It's the nursemaid." When he looked at me again, he was smiling. "You have no idea how much trouble you have prevented saving the foal. I wanted you to be my guest. I have no wish to hurt you. You will be the one to take care of the filly. Will you come willingly?" There was no doubt in my mind that he wanted the filly, and he was afraid that without me she might not make it. I was very sure he had no other need of a guest. I counted the men and boys. There were upward of 20, all mounted. I had no chance of escape, not here or now. "I will," I said, "if you give me your word that you won't pursue anyone." I gestured in the direction the others had gone. "Done," he answered, and I could not tell if he was lying. There was little I could do about it. Either way, I was sure of three things. I would not be as brave as Bebin had been. I would take care of my filly and bide my time, and one fine morning they would wake to find us gone.